to write us an email at tmipodcast2018. That's tmipodcast2018 at gmail.com. Let us know how we're doing. Also, check us out on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter at TMI_podcast 2018. Just use the numbers. Don't spell it out.
Ooh, don't forget Facebook.com/TMI Podcast 2018.
Follow us on the Apple Podcast app. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review.
All you YouTubers out there, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, TMI Podcast 2018. Look for the popcorn bucket.
That's right. Also, check us out on Spotify and the Google Play Music app for all you Android users. Follow us and subscribe everywhere. We appreciate it. We're doing it for you guys, the fans. Thank you.
The moment our fellow geeks, dweebs, nerds, and other unfortunates have been fervently waiting for has finally arrived. It's time for TMI, Confessionals of the Nerd Kind. And now, your hosts, Dave Odinson Warhowski, Jeff Nerfherder Chandler, Jim Kaiju Baker, and Mike Mjolnir Evans. And now, let's get on with the show. Here is TMI.
Welcome.
Hey, we're back. Nice.
Another Wednesday. I think putting these episodes out in the middle of the week kind of brightens everybody's week, don't you think?
I agree.
It's something that I look forward to.
I know we're not the only ones who actually look forward to it. We do have some listeners out there, so thank you very much for tuning in again.
Yes.
We appreciate it greatly.
Yeah, we welcome all of our international listeners as well as listeners in the continental U.S. and Canada and Mexico. I guess Mexico would be international. So would Canada, for that matter. Welcome all. So what episode are we at? We're at number 20, aren't we? This
wow, 20. It's huge.
We are officially an antique, I think. At 20. I just want to go back in time just a little bit to the days when we were first beginning this podcast. And our wayward host, Dave Warhowski, who's kind of seeded the podcast to Jeff, Mike, and I, he set everything up, our Facebook page, our email, to TMI Podcast 2018. What are we going to do once it's 2019? Are people going to think, okay, they must not be in business anymore? It says 2018.
One and done. I know.
Maybe we should announce it in those days as 2018 instead of 2018. Assuming that we're still going to be on the airwaves here, but there you go. So this week, episode 20, we are concentrating on Ready Player One. This is our main feature this week, Steven Spielberg. So the setup here of Ready Player One is we have a character called Wade living in 2045. Is it Cleveland? Is it...
Yeah, it was Ohio. Yep.
It was Ohio, okay. And it's a world that's pretty run down. He lives in a trailer park of trailers stacked upon each other, hence the name The Stacks.
The Stacks. They actually call it The Stacks.
And to get away from the dreary reality of life in 2045, everybody is hooked into virtual reality in this world called the OASIS, which has been created by a genius by the name of James Halliday and his partner Ogden Morrow, I believe his name was.
Ogden, yep.
Ogden Morrow.
Played by our friend Simon Pegg.
Very happy to see him. And this virtual world called the OASIS is where you can create an avatar. You can have any kind of vehicle that you want. It's just an escape, an alternate reality to the world that you're living in.
Because your world sucks.
Yeah.
Apparently, no one goes to school or has jobs.
Yeah, all they do is they're in this oasis.
So how do they afford this equipment? You've got these very sophisticated headgear, and you got these travel pod. That's like a treadmill. That's a 360. So you can be immersed in your living room in this rundown shack, but go into this other world and you can be anybody. So there's no reason to eat.
Big corporation that exists in this world is IOI, Innovative Online Industries. And they apparently, everyone on the face of the planet is in debt to them in some way or other.
Right, yeah.
So perhaps they're getting all
really
this from this place.
Maybe they hand out these headsets.
So apparently, yeah, if you're in debt to this company, then you have to go work for them, kind of like an indentured servant if you can't pay them back. And what are you doing if you're working for them? You're in the Oasis looking for an Easter egg.
Which this
Easter egg of all Easter eggs.
This movie is nothing but an Easter egg.
So James Halliday has left an Easter egg in the Oasis, and you've got to figure out where it is. First of all, there's 3 keys, and you have to get the 3 keys in the Oasis to then find out where this Easter egg is. And the keys are obtained by successfully going through challenges that Halliday has left behind.
Right.
And it's all set up very much like a video game, having to get through one level and then the next level and then the next level till you get to the big boss, which is the Easter egg in this case.
Yeah, I guess I misunderstood when the ground rules were set there with the three keys. I got the assumption that there were only 3 keys, but each person can find the same key. Correct. So multiple players, it's a big race, right? Because he's leaving them his vast fortune as well as ownership of the Oasis.
Which I'm not really quite getting why he wanted to do that. Because it didn't look like the Oasis needed to be owned by anyone. He was gone, but it still existed. So you had the possibility of a corporation like IOI winning this Easter egg and shutting down the Oasis.
Or monetizing it and then charging you money to play.
Which is what their intent was.
Right.
So there's all these people going after it, corporations such as IOI going after it. And if you're an indentured servant to IOI, you owe them money, then they force you to go into the Oasis and also look for the Easter egg, along with other employees that are doing this on the up and up. So there's all these people that are gunning for this Easter egg.
It is so, it is so Willy Wonka-ish in its premise because it's the gold ticket.
It is. And in the trailer, you heard Pure Imagination.
And so these Easter egg hunters are called Gunters, which, okay, all right.
Yeah, we'll give them that.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, Wade Watts is our main character, and I'm not really sure why I cared. His parents are gone, so he lives with his aunt and abusive
and this scumbag boyfriend. Yeah,
right. But it wasn't like, I don't know. To me it was like I had no emotions invested in this character whatsoever. I mean, listen, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. It's pure escapism. It is, Jim, like you said before. There is so many Easter eggs and just eye candy going on. There, all these background characters and ships and cars and it's much. It's a lot going on and it's fun. It's like Spielberg was like feeding off himself. So I read an article where he was constantly fighting with the graphic artist because they were constantly trying to take little things from his movies and hide them in here, and he didn't want that. And yet we have the DeLorean. I mean, he didn't direct Back to the Future, but he was executive producer. And we've got a huge chase scene at the beginning with the T-Rex from Jurassic Park.
Right.
So it's like, why stop there? Why, you are the master of pop culture over the last 30, 40 years. Embrace it. I don't know.
Yeah. So what this does, the movie, what it sets up is in the Oasis, you can have any vehicle you want from any movie. You can be any character from any movie that you want to be as your avatar. So this gives the opportunity for the filmmakers to just populate the Oasis with any pop culture figure, icon, vehicle that they want to.
Yeah, I think the only vehicle I didn't see was the General Lee.
It might have been in there. Who knows?
It may have been, but yeah, again, you got the DeLorean. I did catch the Mach 5.
The Mach 5.
The 66 Batmobile, Kit 2000. Well, the DeLorean had a weird, the DeLorean had a Kit eye thing going on the front of it, so it was a mashup. But I think a Kit 2000 is actually in there as well. Christine from the Stephen King novels in there.
The light cycles from Tron.
Yes, yep. And of course, Artemis? She drives Akira's the motorcycle from Akira. So yeah, all that stuff is just a lot of fun.
Yeah. So we have another Scooby Gang in this movie, which is Wade Watts, and his avatar's name is Parsifal in the Oasis. So you're not yourself in the Oasis. You're a pseudonym, and nobody knows your real self. Which comes in handy in this movie because if they did, Wade goes against IOI a number of times, so they eventually find out who he is. But if
so right,
they would just be able to take you out in the real world if they knew who you were.
Right. So all right, let's jump ahead a little bit because he finds the first key. And now he's somebody. He's popular. People recognize him. They know him. Why wouldn't you change your avatar? I mean, I think Artemis tried to dress him down, Clark Kent-wise, combing his hair, the glasses. But why would you not alter your appearance so that people don't know who you are? Because now they know that you got the one key, and they're just going to follow you around or maybe try and steal it. I don't know. That was a little...
And the whole incognito thing goes with your friends in the Oasis as well. You don't know who they are in the outside world.
Right. That was actually, so the opening when we first meet Wade, and he's in his home in the stacks. And, so pop culture, I mean, 80s music galore in this thing. And as he's jumping down from the top of this thing's got to be 8, 10, 12 trailers tall. And you're seeing all of his neighbors, and they're all at different ages, shapes, sizes, immersed into the Oasis. The fat lady.
All have some kind of virtual reality gear.
Right. Pole dancing, the little girl, right. You don't know who these people are. You become emotionally invested in these people, but they don't look or act anything like what their avatars are.
Right. So Wade is Parsifal. Then he hooks up with Artemis, who we find out later is Olivia Cook, and her character Samantha in the real world. Mm-hmm. We have H, or Ake, however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And so H is Wade's best friend. But
they never met. But in the virtual reality, he's never actually physically met this person.
And it's a huge, like bodybuilder looking, like cyborg type guy. Who it's a giveaway immediately as soon as this character talks. You're like, well, that's a woman's voice. Slow down.
It reminded me of Korg from Thor Ragnarok.
It's like, why do just put a male voice in there if you really want a surprise, because anybody that's like in the know would know, okay, this is just a female voice, slow down. And they try to surprise you with it. It's actually a girl when you find out who these people are in reality towards the end of the movie, which was no surprise to me, unfortunately. Then we have Dado and Sho, who make up the last two members of this ragtag gang of kids, for want of a better term, that are looking for the Easter egg. And we find out that Artemis, who was pretty much a celebrity herself already in the Oasis,
he recognizes her.
Is looking for the Easter egg to topple IOI because her father was one of these indentured servants in IOI and ended up dying while he was working for them because they overworked him. So Samantha and Artemis, who are the same person, have a personal agenda in finding the Easter egg. So there's all these interesting things going on. I really enjoyed the fact that it was just something to look at for 2.5 hours so I could scour to see what was going on here. The fact that they had Mechagodzilla.
Oh, I know.
I was just like,
I can't believe it took you this long to even bring it.
I almost stood up with my arms in the air, like, go!
Mechagodzilla!
That goes without saying. I loved that whole section in the back. And I actually read somewhere that the Iron Giant originally was supposed to be Ultraman, and they couldn't get the rights to Ultraman.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was supposed to be an Ultraman versus Mechagodzilla battle at the end of this movie, but which was not to be.
I think the Iron Giant is the biggest, most obvious Easter egg in this thing because he's front and center, and you see him, being kind of built throughout.
He's what you see in all the trailers as well.
Right, correct.
So
I didn't realize that he would have this big of a part, but I think they missed the whole heart of Iron Giant, which is he spent the entire movie protesting that he was not a gun, and yet that's exactly how they used him. A giant weapon. Come on.
And so Mechagodzilla, the highlight of the movie for me, those few minutes, and that is commandeered by Nolan Sorrento, who is he's the head of IOI.
He's the head of, or at least what we saw as the head.
Played by the great Ben Mendelsohn, who is one of the greatest bad guys, I think, that's around.
You can just be menacing just by looking.
And just like his voice, because he's got like a lisp or something that makes his voice very distinctive and evil at the same time. And I always confuse him. I don't know, Jeff, if you remember this guy, Noah Taylor. I always confuse Ben Mendelsohn with Noah Taylor, who was in Vanilla Sky with Tom Cruise, He was tech support at the end of Vanilla Sky, who kind of explains to Tom Cruise that he's in virtual reality land, if you know. And he looks very similar to Ben Mendelsohn, and I think they're both either from Australia or maybe Noah Taylor is New Zealand, Australia, but they have similar accents as well. But that's neither here nor there.
Right. I digress. Yeah. I had issues with him because, again, he's got an avatar and he goes into the Oasis, but he's sitting in a chair. And so how is he able to walk around?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You just established that you need this treadmill thing to be able to walk 360. And then you see this guy just sitting in a chair, all Thanos-like. And then he goes into the Oasis and he's walking and running around.
And that reminds me as well, there was another point that came up towards the end when the huge battle is going on that Mechagodzilla is a part of. Parzival calls all the gamers out to the Oasis because he tells them that IOI is trying to get the egg. They have to launch this massive attack against IOI at the end. And as the Scooby Gang in reality are driving on the streets while Parzival's in there, you see all these people on the sidewalk with their virtual gear on. How do you not just run into the road? You can't see where you're going in reality. How do you stay on the sidewalk and just?
This is a sad commentary on our future. I mean, you see it now. People getting run over, on their phones, walking across the street, not putting their heads up.
It's true. The other big moment for this was the middle of the movie when they go into The Shining.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive, and it's funny because I watched it with my kids. Neither one of them have ever seen The Shining yet. Knew that scene, knew exactly what it was.
And that's where the second key is to get to the second clue lies in the Overlook Hotel in the movie The Shining. And they go into the film, literally go into the film, because I read that Spielberg, because he was so close with Kubrick towards the end of his life, he was able to procure the rights to The Shining, the actual print. So he was able to use a lot of the original film in Ready Player One and insert the characters into it. And then they also filmed some new stuff like Room 237. But he seamlessly blends original footage with new footage that he needed to shoot. H goes into Room 237 and encounters the old hag in the shower.
Hi, naked lady. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your bath time.
Which was a pretty intense scene. It was a pretty impressive.
I would like to have seen a little more of that, like jumping into movies.
Yes,
a little Back to the Future 2 kind of, and it's funny because one of the Easter eggs you see on a movie marquee is Jack Slater, and that was the movie in a movie of, remember that Arnold Schwarzenegger, Last Action Hero, and that's another kind of very meta. I remember walking out of the theater not liking that movie, but I really want to watch it again because
I did like that movie.
It didn't pay itself. Yeah, there was all kinds of illogical movie logic going on with that thing. We might have to revisit that.
But I read that originally in the novel, the scene with The Shining was actually Blade Runner that they go into in the novel of Ready Player One. So, and that featured heavily in the book, but for some reason they couldn't get the rights to Blade Runner, so they had to switch it over to The Shining.
That's interesting.
I don't know how they would have done that, like in the world of Blade Runner. It's been on the city streets, or how they would have worked, trying to get that.
Yeah, because that Shining is a very, very specific scene. So the blood and all that stuff.
Yeah, and you kind of get a hint of Jack Nicholson. You don't see him.
Right.
You see his legs like in the maze at the end going after H. I liked watching the movie, although I was distanced from it. I wasn't completely involved in the story because my father gave me a heads up about this movie before I watched it because he watched it and loved it. And he was on the cusp of everything in the 80s in terms of Activision, Atari, Super Nintendo. So he's been a gamer since the games have been available to buy, from Pong on upwards. And he's a big fan of games like Legend of Zelda, Adventure, Quest games. And he said this movie is very much set up like that. It speaks to gamers. If you're very familiar with playing a game, and that's why he loved it so much. And while I was watching it, I got the same impression of being a watcher of games and being like not really interested in playing, but being forced to watch my friends play games.
And you know what? I'm actually
an outsider.
My kids do that all the time. My son will have friends over, and one person will be playing a game, and they're all like sitting there watching. I'm just like, whatever. Okay.
Yeah. So it gave me that flashback of sitting there watching, being distanced from it, not being involved, but kind of enjoying it. And like the fact that all the characters in the Oasis are made to look like gaming avatars, as if you were playing a game now, today.
Yeah, just the aesthetic in this is just, you're in a virtual world.
Yeah. And, the title, Ready Player One, I think it's all, it's very much geared towards.
What's even cool, and I can't take credit for this, but I did see it this morning. The logo, the type treatment for Ready Player One on the movie posters and in the credits itself is a maze with a little Easter egg at the end.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you have to, almost like a Pac-Man, you got to weave your way through the lettering to get to the Easter egg in the O and 1. Well thought out.
Were you a player of Adventure?
I don't know Adventure at all. No. My video game knowledge and expertise began and ended with Pitfall. Well, we had Atari, Space Invaders. I had a handheld Space Invaders. I took that ever and played it, but I never really got involved in any of this other stuff. My kids now, my daughter's huge into Dungeons and Dragons. So there was a couple little references to that as well. Between the video games and the movie and TV references, this movie's just jam packed. Did you think the curator at the museum was Ask Jeeves, the pre-Google?
Oh, is that what it was meant to be?
I don't know. That's what I kind of got that feel, but I don't know if that was what they were going for.
That makes a lot of sense that you say that now, because everything in the Oasis was tied to some form of pop culture or another. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was supposed to be Ask Jeeves. But we do know that it was Simon Pegg at the end of the movie. It's revealed that the character of Morrow was kind of helping them out a little bit as on their journey, maybe out of guilt. Who knows?
Yeah, it was funny because you knew he was in the movie and you saw. So Wade goes back to this Halliday Museum that catalogs his entire memory existence in these. I'm watching this and he's watching these scenes between the two Halliday and Ogden play out as they start to build out this world. It rotates, it shifts. So this whole thing was filmed with those 360 cameras. Do you ever see a setup where you basically have numerous cameras in a circle around the scene and they're all filming simultaneously? So at any point you can take that scene and rotate it from a different point of view. And so it was a neat little camera trick that I was like, oh, that's cool. Like it was just a stupid throwaway thing, but I liked it. But yeah, he was able to go back, and why 5 years later people had not picked up on some of these clues, because they said right after he died, like this museum was jam-packed with people. They were there every day, scouring through his memories, trying to figure out, clues to where these keys were. And yet 5 years later, it takes Wade 2 minutes to figure it out.
But there was some funny little bits here and there that I thought were worth noting. The corn syrup droughts that he mentions in the the bandwidth riots and the corn syrup droughts that kind of brought them to where they were, to the world in 2045. Was there a Beastmaster poster in his? Did I notice a movie poster of Beastmaster that was on the wall in his avatar?
I wouldn't doubt it, but I did not see it.
I think there was. That Zemeckis cube, if you caught that.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. Yeah.
Which is a weapon that he had that turns everything back in time, 60 minutes. Right. Yeah. 60 seconds. Yeah.
60 seconds. Yeah. Now the guy who played Halliday, Mark Rylance.
Yes.
He's a well-known actor. We've seen him.
And I was trying to place him, and then I finally figured out who it was once the credits rolled. Bridge of Spies, Mark Rylance.
There you go. That's
for an Oscar.
Yeah, and that was interesting too, because when you went back into the museum, the archives, he was a younger version of himself than what you see when he's old. So I thought they did a pretty good job with makeup and whatnot. So when his death video played, obviously there's all these Star Trek, Starfleet insignias. The flower arrangement is the big Star Trek symbol, but his casket was the Mark 6 missile that they buried Spock in. I thought that was kind of a throwaway thing.
Really? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, look at that.
That's pretty good.
Yep.
That is pretty good. And one more thing, actually, I have this in my notes, that this ties in with one of our previous classic films, One Crazy Summer. I really got to feel that the scumbag boyfriend was modeled after the dude in One Crazy Summer that was trying to win the contest. Yeah, the same mullet.
The mullet. Yeah. Well, you can't be. Yeah, if you live in a trailer park, you have to have a mullet.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah, even in 2045, I think it's standard issue.
It was very well received when it was released earlier this year. Budget $175 million, grossed $582 million. And I hear that Ernest Cline, who was the author of the novel Ready Player One, is conceiving a sequel right now. Whether or not they're going to do a movie of it, who knows, because Spielberg has said that this was probably his second or third most difficult movie to make. I don't know if that has to do with the all the clearances he probably had to get for all.
I'm sure he wasn't on the phone
or what have you, but I don't know if Spielberg will be back. But there will be a sequel, at least in book form. And Rotten Tomatoes, 73%, fresh. So critics on the whole liked it.
73%,
yeah.
Wow.
So what are we thinking? What would we give this thing? I think myself, just the points I was making earlier, I loved all the pop culture Easter eggs, all the references that are sprinkled throughout this thing, but still the plot didn't really hold me. The characters, like Jeff said,
it's
really
second. It's by the books. It's no surprise. Bad guy loses, kid wins. Yeah,
doesn't give you the normal warm fuzzy that a Spielberg movie would either. But because of all the the eye candy and everything, I would give it a solid 3. Popcorn.
I would back that up 3. Yeah, it's eye candy but empty calories.
Yes, very well put. Very well put.
There's no surprises, but you're right. It's the sheer pleasure of just finding all these little things in there. And again, you probably walk out of the movie theater and you're like, I didn't see half of that. So watching it at home on high def, pausing it, going back, you're able to catch all that stuff. Because they spend people spend thousands of hours burying the damn Eagle 5 from Spaceballs in the background so that somebody could see it.
Yeah, and it sounds like that the animators are putting stuff in that Spielberg didn't even know about.
Well, right, I guess. So again, this article was intimating that they were constantly it was a challenge for them to try, and I guess they snuck in a gremlin somewhere. I didn't see it in the big battle.
I didn't either.
But again, that's like the story that there's a sneaker flying around in the space scene at the end of Return of the Jedi when there's a battle outside the the Death Star.
Right.
One of the special effects guys put a sneaker in there. Have I ever seen it? No. I'm sure it's there.
And I also read that Spielberg was denied use of anything from Close Encounters, which he tried to get in. I don't know what exactly he tried.
You wrote it.
He did, yes, but Columbia owns it, and they wouldn't give him the rights.
There's an R2-D2 buried in that mothership as well.
Yes, and where else? In Star Trek, in the first J.J. Abrams, right?
Oh yeah. There's an R2. There's an R2 floating by. He's a little more obvious.
Yeah.
He's a little obvious. Yeah, it's it's fun to look at, and it's nothing really earth-shattering. I mean, even especially effects-wise, like we're so used to seeing this stuff now that you're not even really. I will say, so King Kong comes early in the movie. I guess he's the first boss, really.
On the first challenge, yeah.
But he didn't really look like any Kong that we've seen in movie form. Because I'm like, why, if you're going to all these depths to bring the Batmobile and all these other cars in and all this nostalgic stuff, he didn't look like Kong from the 33 movie, and he didn't look like Kong from the Peter Jackson movie.
If there was a Kong, he was closest to the Peter Jackson Kong.
Right, but I still don't think that.
But it still didn't really look like that.
No, and he definitely didn't look like Skull Island Kong.
No.
That was my only quibble. He didn't really, he wasn't like ripped right out of the movies.
Yeah, but everything else was. So that was interesting. That if they did the 76 Kong, that would have been cool.
That would have been fun. I would have loved that. So yeah, there you go. That's definitely worth checking out.
Definitely put your finger on the pause button throughout, because you'll want to stop it, because there's multiple things in probably every frame in the OS.
Oh, easily. Mm-hmm. I mean, even some of these cars had bumper stickers and logos. I mean, it was just littered. RoboCop. I saw RoboCop.
Yeah, with Marvin the Martian.
Yeah. Doc Brown from Back to the Future 2. Yeah. We had a little more obvious was Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, and speaking of RoboCop, he is mentioned quite heavily in our next film.
Oh, yeah.
So, Jeff, do you want to go to the concession stand before we begin the classic feature? Because I think I smell.
Oh, yeah, let's go to the confession, because the confession ties right into this.
No, the concession, not the
the concession. Oh, we got too many words going on here today.
Yeah, let's go out to the concession stand. Let's get a snack, and then let's get right into this classic.
I hope we don't run out of corn syrup.
I hope not either.
Hey, somebody's crazy. Papa goes the weasel. Everybody knows the weasel blows. But popcorn, she pops real good. I eat popcorn. Everybody eats popcorn. She tastes real nice. Get yourself some now. at our refreshment stand.
The classic feature this week. We tried to do something that would tie in thematically with Ready Player One. So I didn't want to go Tron because I thought that would be too obvious. In retrospect, maybe I should have. But so I went back to the annals of filmdom, back to the 90s, and this obscure today, I think. It's relatively obscure, even though it does have a very famous pedigree. Strange Days.
I was oblivious to the James Cameron connection.
Strange Days, 1995 sci-fi thriller, written by James Cameron, directed by Catherine Bigelow, who went on to do The Hurt Locker, I believe.
Now, were they husband and wife at the time?
They may have been, actually. I don't know.
They were at one time.
I don't know if they were. But I do know this, that when Cameron made the deal with 20th Century Fox, he sold them both True Lies and Strange Days at the same time. True Lies was a mega smash. Strange Days, not so much. So what it is, made in 1995, and it takes place on the last 2 days of 1999 to the leading up to New Year's Eve in the year 2000. And the drug of choice in 1999, according to this movie, is not a drug at all. What it is something called SQUID discs.
The SQUID.
The SQUID. And I didn't even bother to look up what this was an acronym for.
I was going to write it down at one point, and I never bothered to rewind it.
It means something. But what you do is you put this, like, what looks like a hairnet on your head.
Yeah, it's like an electronic hairnet.
Yeah. And most people like to put a wig on over it so nobody sees that they're wearing it. And it records your thoughts, what you're doing.
Your perception, yeah.
And it records it onto this mini disc. And somebody else who's wearing the hairnet can plug in the disc and watch what you're doing. It's basically watching a slice of memory that you've laid down on this disc, and you can hear everything that's going on. You can see everything that's going on. And apparently, you can feel everything that's going on. So you can imagine the debased things that people are viewing.
It is voyeurism at its best and worst, I guess, depending on which. And our main character sells these. He's a pusher.
Yes. So the character of Lenny is the pusher in this movie, as played by Ray Fiennes. And a salute to all of you that still call him Ralph Fiennes. Because really,
and L is silent.
But he plays Lenny in this movie, and he is an ex-cop. I'm not sure why he's off the force. Maybe
they never really, unless he just became so immersed with these.
Yeah, maybe because he was so sleazy, they just could not have him on the force anymore. Because he is really a scumbag in this movie.
He's not a nice guy, right?
No,
you see it right off the bat that this is not a.
Although he does not peddle in snuff. That's what established very early on.
Blackjack, is that what it is when it's a rape or snuff or some of this other more scandalous.
Right. Yeah. So he sells these things to the highest bidder, who want to see these salacious videos.
It's pure and uncut. It's straight from the cerebral cortex. I mean, you're there, you're doing it, you're seeing it, you're hearing it, you're feeling it.
So what happens is he's kind of on the low life end of society, is Lenny. And he frequents with a lot of hookers and dealers and characters such as this. And the whole movie is based around the murder of an acquaintance of Lenny's who happens to be a prostitute. And her name
just happens to be.
It happens to be
Iris.
Yes.
But that was like an hour into this movie.
Yeah.
Like you're following this guy around, and you're kind of like, all right, you're seeing what he's pushing, and like you said, he's not a nice guy. He likes to eat and drive. It's just But they were calling him. He has these street names. You're the Magic Man. I'm the Santa Claus of the subconscious. Like he has all like these little.
His hair is greasy. Yeah.
Long and greasy.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it becomes a murder mystery. So this is Juliette Lewis. This was pretty much the height of her career. I mean, she was pretty popular then. She was on a roll. Yeah. She is naked throughout this entire movie. I mean, if she's not taking her clothes off, she's got see-through clothes.
Yeah.
She's got a dress that.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. I'm just like.
Yeah, she did a PJ Harvey song.
Oh, I don't know.
Rid of Me, it was called.
Okay.
But anyway, so she is Faith, and she is a fledgling rock singer, it looks like.
Yeah, and she's hooked up with this scummy guy, Philo Gant. And he was played by Michael Wincott. He seemed very familiar.
He was the bad guy in The Crow. I think maybe where you're thinking of him.
Man,
he also looks a lot like Michael Paré from.
That might be who I'm thinking of.
Is that Michael Paré that was in the Warriors, or am I thinking of another actor? I don't know.
I don't know. Okay.
Xanadu, the Warriors, that guy. So he looks very much like Michael Wincott, who is not the same actor, but he was in The Crow. So very, and I was actually reading that they were considering Bono in his role.
I did see that, and I think at one point Andy Garcia was high on the list to play Lenny.
So Lenny has an ex-girlfriend, Faith, who's played by Juliette Lewis, who is the aspiring rock singer who was hooked up with Philo, who is like a rock manager or something.
Yeah, I guess he's like a.
And one of his other charges is the top rapper of 1999, and his name is Jericho 1. And a subplot of the movie is that Jericho 1 has been murdered mysteriously.
Yes.
Turns out that the murder of Jericho 1 is very much tied into Lenny's story, but he just doesn't know it until towards the end of the movie. You've got two cops, one played by Vincent D'Onofrio, the mighty Kingpin from Daredevil.
Right. Steckler.
And William Fichtner, who is also a very big...
Yeah, he's all over the
actor.
place.
He's in a lot of movies. So, but he plays the silent partner in this because he really doesn't really have any dialogue.
No, he was doing his best Robert Patrick, Terminator T-1000. Like, he didn't really speak much at all. They were just bad cops.
Bad cops. And this
I did find out that
William
Fichtner went to my alma mater.
Really?
Farmingdale, 1976
Nice.
graduate.
Shout out to William.
Yeah, but he's like in Armageddon, Contact. He's all over the place.
Yeah, he's just, he's a very distinctive looking actor. And as my wife says, he was in one of her mother's favorite soap operas, which I hear every time he shows up on screen. Oh, it's him.
Oh, funny.
So Jericho 1 is shot by two police officers. This is very much a comment because this takes place in Los Angeles and the movie comes out right around the time of Rodney King and the LA riots.
Yeah.
So LA was very much in the national spotlight at the time. So the fact that Jericho 1 is killed by these two police officers who immediately try to cover it up by killing the hooker that is Lenny's friend, who Lenny is trying to figure out what happened to. It's very much a commentary on the state of the LAPD and what's going on there.
And the backdrop of this is this lead up, this huge celebration to the 2000. Now, we all lived through Y2K, and there was serious concerns that it was the end of the world. Yeah. I know people who stocked up on plywood and duct tape.
Oh, I did too. I had tons of bottled water.
We were convinced that all the computers were going to go down, planes were going to fall out of the sky, and it was just going to
everybody's bank account was going to be erased.
Yep. Yeah, it was a little prescient, because they did talk about this, what's going to happen. So this huge event is playing out behind this story. And obviously Iris was wired at the time. And so she videotaped the murder.
Lenny's friend, by the name of Matt, who is a PI, who not only is Lenny's friend, but he's been hired by Philo to keep tabs on Faith. So if you're having trouble keeping up with this,
and Sizemore had the worst hairdo ever in a film.
He has long, stringy hair, and you're thinking to yourself, "What a bad wig!" But then you realize he's wearing a squib the whole time. So
right, it is a wig. Yeah, all right, that makes sense then. We didn't bring up Macy though, the greatest badass character,
Angela Bassett.
She saves this movie. She is the heart and soul of this movie, because there's nobody else redeemable whatsoever. Even Lenny, he's just so love-struck with Faith, and he just can't get over. He's constantly watching memories of the two of them together when they were dating, and he just can't get past. It's just, we've all had that friend, or we've all been there maybe at some point, but it's just pathetic to watch. You just can't get over. And you realize pretty quickly that Macy loves him. She absolutely cares for him, although he does everything in his power to piss her off, but she keeps coming back. She keeps helping him out. Yeah. And you know what? So this came out, what was it? 95?
95.
Huge missed opportunity for this woman to play Storm from the X-Men. I feel that she would have been phenomenal. She's ripped. She can fight. I'm watching this movie. I go, man, she would have been a cool Storm.
And it's funny, is watching this movie, it is very much like a time capsule, because you're so used to Ralph Fiennes now looking like Voldemort. or new Q.
Hey, look, he had a nose then.
Yeah. And then Angela Bassett from American Horror Story. That's where I know her the best from these days. So it's like going back to when these people, they just look like kids in this movie. Ray Fiennes looks really
Well, it's weird because you don't really think 95 was all that long ago, but it was 23 years ago. I know. I don't want to admit it, but yeah, it was a while ago.
And so as Jeff mentioned, getting back to the plot of this movie, I keep forgetting the prostitute's name that gets murdered. What is her name again?
Iris.
So she's wired. So she's hooked up with a squib while she's getting murdered, and the killer turns out to be Max, played by Tom Sizemore, who is probably the biggest scumbag movie character that you can get.
Yeah, because
if you need a scumbag, you used to go to Tom Sizemore in the 90s, because I couldn't believe, because I didn't remember how the movie ended when I just watched it, for this show. When Tom Sizemore comes in, he's the best friend. What a scumbag.
The motivations were kind of.
Then it turns out he is the killer. So so there you go. So at the very end, because now Tom Sizemore, I'm not even going to go into the reasons why he's the murderer and all this stuff, but he backed in while he was killing the prostitute. So it turns out he's wearing a wig through the whole movie, and he's got the squib on. So at the end, when he's struggling with Lenny pulls the wig off and pulls the squid off, and it turns out that Tom Sizemore actually has a shaved head under that wig.
Right.
So he looked like Curly from the Three Stooges. I felt like after the squid came off, he should have ran his hands over his head like.
That would have been a better ending. I would have loved it.
And then the fact that he has a great death scene, actually, when he falls to his death and lands on the van, in the middle of all the revelry happening for
countdown to the millennium. But that was so. There's thousands of people in the street, so they must have spent all their money on these extras, because you can see the wire that's holding him as he's falling. And I'm like, we couldn't have CG'd that out. No. I read somewhere that this big New Year's celebration, they paid the extras like $10 to be in the scene. There's literally thousands of people. I mean, I can't imagine.
$10 each?
I believe that was what I read.
Wow.
Yeah. But I will say, what was really impressive was when you jack in, or when you actually watch these videos, it's from the person's point of view, their eyes. That was pretty impressive, because there was a sequence at the beginning where these guys were robbing a bank, or they're robbing a convenience store, and they're on the run. Cops are chasing them, shooting at them, and it's all from this guy's point of view. So go back 23 years. They didn't really have like these little handheld cameras. They had they actually, I was reading somewhere that they designed this special headgear to be able to film from this person's point of view. And the guy jumps across like a 20-foot gap in buildings, and he falls.
Yeah, and you're following.
It all seems like it's one seamless shot, but you can tell where it's been cut. But it was pretty impressive, I think, for the time. It's just that aspect of it I thought was pretty impressive from a technical.
So you're saying it was headgear because you saw these people's their hands as if you were
right. Correct. You look down, you see your feet. At one point, he gives his friend who has no legs a video of a guy running on the beach. So the guy, even though he doesn't have legs, he now has a sensation of running on the beach, and a hot chick walks by and whatever. So. It's a weird little throwaway thing, but I think technically wise, it was pretty impressive.
So now do you see the connection why we did this? So it kind of fits with Ready Player One. Almost.
I had a little more cursing and a lot more porn. But
Yeah. Warning, anybody that wants to watch Strange Days after listening to this, it does have some pretty heavy scenes in it, including rape, murder. So
yeah, that's
if you're sensitive to that, then I would.
But if you're just looking for naked Juliette Lewis, there's lots of that. I liked it. His other friend was Tick. Do you know who that guy was?
The guy with the tick, right? The guy with the facial tick.
Yeah. They called him Tick. Yeah, the little on the nose.
No, tell us who.
He was the parking attendant in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes, and he's the one that steals the car.
Yeah, they steals the car. Yep.
And they do the jump in slow motion. Yeah,
with the Star Wars theme song.
Yeah.
And it took me years to realize that they were goofing on the Star Destroyer coming on screen.
Yeah.
He's also Spike from the Super Mario Brothers, which we've reviewed.
I was disappointed that they did not shoot the mime at the end of the mime that just jumps on like a random car and is like starting to do mime stuff.
And you saw him a couple times throughout. And when Macy's on the run from the cops and the mime shows up. Yeah, bad guys had machine guns. Like I guess that's standard issue in cops when they're on the run. She's a limo driver. And thankfully, it's bulletproof, but it's not fireproof because they're stuck on a dock, and so the bad guys just douse it with gasoline. Now he's pouring this stuff all over the stuff, including himself, and then steps back and lights a flare. He would have immediately been engulfed.
These cops made the worst decisions, I think, of any cops. They
were not bad cops, or they were bad cops.
They were bad cops. They weren't good bad cops.
But miraculously,
then they go. So they set the car on fire, right?
Right.
And they're on it. They happen to be on a dock while this is happening.
Drive it into the water. And then she has a shotgun in the back, so now we can just open up the trunk. But why not take that shotgun with you? Because more than likely, those cops are waiting for you.
Yeah.
Now we abandon it. And when you get back on the dock, there's no fire.
No, and the cops are gone, too. The cops couldn't wait 2 minutes to see.
No, for them to come back. Oh, they're gone. They're gone. And I was expecting to see Mr. Limpet when we got to the bottom of the bay there. It's like,
it looks very similar. Yeah, very similar setup there.
Yes.
And also the cops, I want to point this out. At the end in the New Year's Eve finale, when they're trying to shoot Angela Bassett as she's running away, they're shooting all these revelers.
They're just gunning
while they're trying to cover themselves. That's why they're trying to shoot Angela Bassett, but they're murdering all these other people.
Right? Yeah,
you just shot yourself in the foot, Vincent.
For lack. Yeah, it was goofy. I enjoyed it. I actually really liked it because it's different. It's different than anything we've watched. The music is pretty impressive too. There's some funky stuff going on throughout this movie.
It is very dated though, because it's got. Although the one thing I did appreciate is that since it was set in 1995, it was only really foreseeing the next 4 years of the future. The Squid thing was a little stretch,
right?
To be introduced within 4 years' time, but at least they didn't have flying cars. In 1999.
That's true. That is true.
So
I would have preferred the flying cars.
So yeah, I would say in terms of popcorn buckets, I would probably give this about the same that I did Ready Player One. I would give it a 3.
Yeah, I agree. Agreed. I will say in the credits though, there's a list of credits for the underwater miniature FX, and I'm like, we couldn't just. The only underwater thing that we saw was the car going in.
The car, yeah.
It was cheaper to make a miniature and drop it into a tank than to actually
drive the car into.
Yeah. That befuddled me. So, and of course, Max made a bad tie comment to Lenny early in the movie, and it comes back to haunt him because he's hanging out for dear life with this from the tie.
It's the tie that kills him.
And he cuts the tie and he just plummets to his death.
That's and I could almost hear as he was falling.
Now I got to go back and watch that scene.
All right, so with that, I think we're ready for a confessional.
Confessionals.
Not a concessional, a confessional.
Yes.
So today's question, we thought, because we're so filled with Easter eggs on the brain from Ready Player One, we're thinking, what vehicle would you commandeer if you were in the Oasis? We saw Wade has the DeLorean, and I know that would be Jeff's first pick. So that's fine if you want to pick that, Jeff.
No.
But what you had any choice of any vehicle you could commandeer in the Oasis, what would you choose? And I'm thinking, I didn't see it in the movie, but I'm thinking I would have to go for the Aston Martin, the James Bond Aston Martin. Loaded up. I would have to have somebody, maybe H in there with me. So
because nobody dies in the Oasis, right? You turn the coins, someone else collects them, and then you got to just start over.
So I would want to, eject somebody from the seat first of all. So
that's actually pretty smart. I like that.
So I would do the Aston Martin, the DB5.
There you go. Just gun your way through.
Yeah.
Well, mine only works in hindsight because we find out that Parzival figures out that you can't get past Kong at the end of this. So he goes in reverse, and magically, the wall opens up, and he's now in this underground racetrack all on his own, racing backwards underneath the race that's going. It's actually a pretty impressive scene. Because you just saw the race prior. So who's the fastest backup guy around is Tow Mater.
Oh,
so, although he really didn't need the backup the whole way. At any point, he could have just turned around and drove straight, but he backed up the whole way with his gull doors open.
Right.
So, but I would have been Tow Mater.
Imagine Tow Mater bursting through into the movie. Here comes Tow Mater.
I ate a bumblebee. So there you go.
All right, there you go. So next week's episode, Mike is not here, obviously, if you haven't figured that out yet.
Wait, what?
Again, he's scouting locations for us. But he came up with a good idea for next week. First of all, when he flies back from Norway, one of the movies on the plane is going to be Rampage, starring Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. So we figured, hey, Mike's going to be just getting in with jet lag, flying right into next week's episode. He's not going to be able to watch anything. So why don't we give him something that he can watch on the plane? Rampage will be our feature next week, our main feature. And it's Mike's choice for a backup. We were thinking maybe he might want to pick a rock theme, another one with Dwayne Johnson. Who knows what Mike's going to go for? He's a big fan of the Fast and Furious movies, so we may end up watching one of those. But we're not sure yet. We're going to put it in Mike's capable hands. But if you want to watch along with us, please do with Rampage, because that will be our main feature next week.
That could have actually played in with this video game.
Very well.
I love that video game.
I've never played it. Rampage?
You've never played Rampage?
I've never played it. I'm not a video game guy.
Oh man, this thing ate up many of my quarters back in the day.
Really?
Because you could either be the Wolfman, the Kong, or there's like a Godzilla-like lizard.
Yeah.
And the whole premise is that you climb buildings, punching, eating people. You jump and you can rampage. You destroy stuff. You're stepping on people, but the helicopters come along and they shoot you, and you mutate back down to a naked person, and then you shuffle off the screen. But the whole point was just a mass destruction. You could eat people in the shower. You could eat people in their living room. Yeah.
Well, hopefully that'll carry
that plays out.
Movie, yeah.
I know. So I think they replaced the
little naked guy with the rock.
With the rock.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
We'll see.
Oh, exactly. So there you go. All right. It was fun.
Have a nice week, everybody.
Strange days. Yeah, have a strange day. All right. Out.
Bye.
Mechagodzilla!